with a lot of my songs, the approach I'm going for is a certain level of simplicity in my writing. And the reason I do that, for one, John Fahey was the big one. His music was the gateway for me with fingerstyle guitar. And I think there's this distinction between Fahey and Leo Kottke, because Kottke was very much a student of him. But Kottke, in a lot of ways, was technically a better player than Fahey, but his material, for most people, is harder to learn. Where a lot of Fahey pieces, they're very approachable for any skill level of guitar. And I think that's something I hold pretty close in my writing, as I believe fingerstyle guitar pieces should be simple enough where any skill level can approach the song and be able to play it in a convincing way. And I think a lot of the skill level should be defined by the touch, not necessarily by the speed. So that's kind of what I do in all of my pieces. Is I think it should have a clear, defined melody. And I think that's what makes it folk music, is if the song is shareable and it can be passed around to people. And I think that's what gets lost in a lot of modern day finger picking music, is I think a lot of it can be too complicated. And, you know, maybe that's just saying that I'm too simple of a player and I could play more technical. Maybe that's the case. But I like playing simple. I like the music to be approachable. The same way Fahey's music was approachable for me, you know. Yeah, the thing, I've had a lot of people play my songs because on my Instagram, I started sharing all of my open tunings for each song. And I noticed right when I started doing that, I started getting tagged in way more covers of my songs on Instagram and YouTube. And it was so cool for me to watch because I can tell the different skill levels that are playing the songs. But at the end of the day, they're all playing the song correctly. Because like the song Elsewhere I just played, that melody is... So I've heard people play it so many different ways, but as long as they're playing that main theme with that, anybody can play it. And that's my favorite part about the song, is I've seen young, old, different levels of players all approaching that song in a different way. But at their core, they're all playing the song correctly. And I think that's the coolest part about writing songs like that, is how every single person approaches it different, you know. Well, I think the silence in my music I've talked about a lot was inspired by where I'm from, the Texas Panhandle. It's a very flat, empty, quiet place. And I try to convey that in my music. And then on top of that, I was inspired by so much music outside of guitar, like ambient music and drone music and things that have a lot of silence in them. And I approach that in my music, specifically live. There would be a part on a record where I would play quite a bit faster, but then live I would play with it, drag it, sit in silence for a lot longer. And even live, I'll play the theme to Brokeback Mountain, because that's one of the most interesting pieces of music to play in terms of just sheer silence. Because in that piece, you just go... You hold it for about that long, and then you go... And it's one of the coolest pieces of music because that's it, but there's something about it when you play it. It's a total reset. So that's what I'm doing in my music, is using silence as a reset of the room I'm playing in. And it feels like ambient music. It's a way to kind of bend the form of what I'm doing, because finger picking can be kind of busy and it's nice to take a stop, you know. So most of my open tunings just come from messing around with the guitar. And I don't have a lot of knowledge with guitar, and I have no training with theory. So for instance, like right now I'm tuned to F, A sharp, F, A sharp, C, F with the capo on the third. I don't know what the notes are with the capo off. Like I couldn't tell you what this is, and it's caused problems where people have asked for tunings of mine, and I've given them capo on the third, these notes. And they'll write me back and be like, hey, I snapped 2 strings. I'm like, no, you're supposed to tune it with the capo on, not with the capo off. But it's because of my lack of knowledge of, I tell people what the notes are with the capo on, which I don't think is the correct way of doing it. But most of my tunings are found that way, where I'm just sitting around with the capo on and I'm just messing with the strings until I get to a point where I'm like, oh, I like the sound of that. With this tuning specifically, I liked it because I found these notes right here where I would hold those, and I was like, okay, that's really cool. So it's just through messing around that I find my tunings. It's very loose in terms of how I write, in terms of I'm following something and seeing how far I can follow it, And I think that's a fun way to write, is it's not technical. It's very much based off of feeling and following the thing I'm hearing. Like I'm chasing something, you know? And that's how I write the songs, just through feeling it out one step at a time. But it all has to make sense to me in terms of a narrative. That each one feels like a story, and I can be opinionated on it, but I don't like esoteric guitar music in terms of rambling. I don't like when songs ramble. I like to have a clear melody, a clear path, and it's just this thing. The melody should be in stone, and the timing's the thing you should have the looseness with. I think that's the thing, is strict melody, looseness with your timing and space. I think that's what I mean. Yeah, this is a Yamaha FG9. I've been playing it for about a year and a half, mainly just for touring. It's just my touring guitar. And yeah, I think it's a rosewood back and the Adirondack top. Plays really great. I like the neck. It's really small on it, but it's the most comfortable guitar. It's really non-threatening, if that's the word. It's like it's so plain looking, which I like. There's just no decoration on it, and it sounds very bad, but it's like it's a nice guitar. But I'm trying to not beat it up, but it's like I'm trying to get the sweat stains on it. And I want to put some wear on this one. But yeah, it's a really comfortable, nice, simple guitar that's really good for finger picking. Very clear. It's like a very bright guitar. I like bright. That's why I always use like new coated strings. I love the new. It's so bright, you know.